Welcome to our COVID-19 one-man video production crew. The car we're driving today is a bit of a one-off in New Zealand. It's the Roewe Marvel X. It's been brought in by SAIC or MG New Zealand to kind of demonstrate to dealers and to journalists just what the brand is capable of when it comes to electric cars. So it's a pretty interesting unit in that it's a premium vehicle from a Chinese brand as opposed to what we've seen so far, which has been more of the mainstream budget end of the market. It has 3 electric motors. It's got quite a lot of performance. I'll run the numbers down the bottom of the screen, and a 52 kilowatt hour battery. It's quite a striking design. It does look somewhat conventional, but that big huge silver grille, there's really prominent chrome garnishes along the sides, the Marvel X branding, it does look really nice. Now the Marvel X name, it's a little bit of interesting, a few interesting ideas about why it might be called that. I mean, some could argue it trades a little bit on the whole superhero aspect of Marvel. Some consider that sounds a little bit like the Model X, of course. Roewe itself, of course, is a brand that acts as the premium halo for SAIC, and it stems from when they purchased Roewe. They couldn't, of course, use the Roewe name because BMW retained ownership. So we've ended up with Roewe. So this car is here on Shanghai plates. It's only here for a year. It is left-hand drive, but it's been really interesting to drive it and see how it works. And I'd say it's a really, really nice car. Exceptionally good to drive. The steering, when I originally picked it up, I was told maybe to expect it to be a little bit over-assisted and light, as you sometimes find with the Chinese vehicles, but I didn't think it was. I think it was quite firm and nicely weighted. The ride is exceptional. It gets through corners brilliantly. It's an all-round nice car. Now if we look a little bit inside, if we pop the boot, and now the boot is very full with stuff, but it's a good sized boot. Absolutely perfectly lined, something you don't necessarily see in all cars these days, even at the premium end of the market, and electrically controlled, of course. Now under the boot floor you have got space to put your charging cables and so forth, and a tyre compressor system for punctures. Now the charging on this car, bearing in mind that it is a Chinese model that's here in New Zealand as opposed to one spec for New Zealand, is actually the Chinese GBT standard. So if we open up here on this side, we have a port. Now this does look a little bit like a Type 2, but it is slightly different. And then if we go around to the other side of the car, we have the other GBT port, and this one is designed for fast charging. Again, a little bit like a Gidamo port, but like totally on its own right, on its own. Now under the front bonnet, there is plastic covering. There's no frunk here. This covers hardware and access to the 12-volt battery. But yet again, I guess it just shows how nicely finished and premium this car looks. An interesting little tidbit on the front, and I'll pop the video in here when I edit it, is that when the car is charging, that front logo actually pulses to show that it's doing so. And you'll also notice that the car has an awful lot of cameras around it. They're in the front, underneath the wing mirrors. There's actually one underneath the edge of the boot that is in use when it's opening for safety. There are a heck of a lot of cameras in this car, which are quite handy. Now, if we go into the interior, and of course, like a certain American brand, the Roewe has unique handles. It does have a unique color choice inside that is probably not what is normally the choice for New Zealand buyers, but again, got to reiterate that it is a Chinese spec vehicle. Now if we look in the back, well, it's a smidge tight on rear kind of knee room, we found, particularly because these front seats are quite bulky. The interior finishings are really nice, and we've got things like really well thought out cup holders, storage spaces, a nice little cubby holder with a USB port down here. I have been amazingly impressed with a weird thing, and that's the floor of the vehicle. So if you kind of look down there and you look around the edges of the flooring, you'll see they're just absolutely amazingly finished. There's no hump in the center. It's completely flat. And even around the door edgings and so forth, it's just attention to detail that's not often seen in cars these days, even the high-end European ones. The seats use this get away from the colour, a really nice kind of Alcantara material, suede material, really nice quality leather on the sides, just really nice finishings everywhere. They got these cool little lights in the here, which are basically kind of a blind spot detection for when you're getting out of the car and there might be a cyclist or a pedestrian coming along or another vehicle. So they start to flash when something's coming along the side, which is a really handy little feature. Coming inside, the Roewe logo there. We start the vehicle. A massive LCD touchscreen here. All sorts of graphics. Same on the main gauge cluster. They are really slick graphics they use in this vehicle. The animations and so forth, they're quick. I think it's actually a little slicker than what Tesla has provided in their cars. Now, the interesting thing about the Marvel X, we see the Marvel X steering wheel there, is that it does like to beep a lot. Is that it uses a OS for these screens and for the infotainment that's tied to the Ali OS, which is, I think of Alibaba, which is perhaps the largest software and online service company in China. They've done their own OS, which is throughout this vehicle. Unfortunately, you need a Chinese registered cell phone to make it work, but you can get to a few of the functions within here. So if you can imagine, when you have got it, ties in things like your maps, it ties in your infotainment, your music, all those kinds of things, and I suspect things like roll tolling and charging experiences and that kind of thing. If we go down here onto the car button, you can do things like put the windows up and down, control the electric sliding roof, all your various safety and driver assistance features. This car has a really good lane keep, adaptive cruise system, assisted parking, all those kind of things. And even though this is a left-hand drive car in a right-hand drive country, they actually worked really well. The lane keeping and kind of driver assist functions, I think, is up there with most of the best out there at the moment. They were really solid on the motorway. We've got over here the charging and range functions of the vehicle and the energy use you'll see there. And then over here, various other controls for the vehicle and their systems. To be honest, I couldn't tell you what they all are, but certainly there's plenty of options of things you can do with the vehicle, speed limiters and the like. If we go back over here, it's also interesting in that the car can be set up to communicate wirelessly with your charger, and of course that allows for a whole pile of other items to work through. Down here you've got your transmission cluster. It's a dial. This over here is your iDrive setting, which allows to change between various functions for the performance of the vehicle. So you go from an E-drive, which is the eco form. You've got N, which is, I'm assuming it stands for normal or natural, and then S for sport. And of course, when you change those, the gauge cluster does change. So if we go into drive over here, and then we set the drive to sport, the gauge cluster changes to going to red and orange, and you will see differences in how the vehicle runs when you're doing that. Mostly it's from the changes you see between the modes are how it uses the motors. If you're an eco, it will strictly stick to the rear motors. There's 2 motors in the rear. If you switch to sport, it will bring in the front motor. And now it's interesting, because of those 3 motors and the way the power stages, it actually almost feels like the vehicle has a gear. If you do a fast takeoff, and I'll put the takeoff specs down at the bottom of this video, the car will rapidly accelerate up to about 65-70 kilometers an hour. Then you'll feel a slight lull as if it's changing gear, and then it'll accelerate away again. It's actually quite a pleasant sensation, and really interesting how it drives. Now, going back to the camera functions over here, see, before there's lots of cameras in the car, you'll see we've got our reversing camera there, but if you touch on various aspects on this dial, I'll try and do this while I'm looking, it will show you all the other cameras throughout the vehicle. And you can also have this kind of overview look where it shows you what the car is doing and whereabouts it's sitting within its environment. And that's dynamic. That'll move as the vehicle moves. Side cameras here again, the nose camera and the reversing camera. And of course you've got an overview over here as well. Though because I've got the door open, it's not showing on that side. The interesting thing is that a lot of these cameras will allow you to interact and move them around, which is something that's missing, I think, from a lot of vehicles. So that's the key things of that feature. The car drives, as I said at the start, really well. It is quick, it is smooth. There's possibly a little more mechanical electrical noise that I'm used to when driving electric vehicles, but it's not too bad, and it just feels really well screwed together. There's no need for the brand to be at all apologetic about how this car is built. I think if you went and popped certain European brands on the steering wheel, certainly if you got rid of the interior color, you'd be hard pressed to fault the way the Roewe drives. So that's our brief tour around the Roewe X. You can read all about the car in full in the next EVs and Beyond magazine, which of course is our exciting new name for EV Talk. That will be out in the next day or so. I hope you enjoyed this, and we look forward to bringing you the full review of this car really soon.